So we're going to start with beer cheese soup because, you know, Wisconsin, autumn. I got a bunch of it made already, and I know who's serving. Are you all helping? Okay. So I'll start cooking it. Okay. I'm just going to show you the setup, and whenever you're ready, we'll start pouring. So we're going to work down here because this is the plug is. So starts with butter. Now the recipe this recipe that I brought has bacon in it. I thought I should make vegetarian on site here for anyone who doesn't want bacon. So we're starting with butter instead of bacon fat. But if this was with bacon, we'd render bacon, take the bacon out when it was crispy and leave the fat. And we'd cook these, what is this? Celery, onions, and jalapenos, and garlic. And you're being provided with this recipe, I believe? Yep, okay, good. So we're gonna saute this up. And this is a pretty standard, you know, one pot, build in the pot soup method. Saute all the veg, we're gonna put in flour to make the roux, and we're gonna thicken the stock and the cream with that roux. So I'm just gonna let this cook away here. This always goes faster when no one's watching. So, one of the things I decided to serve with this, you know, what do you do? Croutons, cheese, what do you put on top? So I made this compound butter. And compound butter is really just butter with stuff mixed into it. This one's apple, apple, bacon, and caraway. I used dried apples from our Willy Pack, which is the pre-packed dried fruits and things you see at the store. And we buy it in bulk and we pack it in smaller sizes. So I got a couple of those and I plumped the apples up in beer, Potosi Czech Pilsner, actually. And then I chopped those apples up with the cooked bacon that was crispy and mixed that in with the caraway seeds and just kind of ran it through the KitchenAid, and there it is. It's going to float a little bit on top. But you can do that with anything. If you were making a steak, you put shallots, garlic, rosemary, red wine, whatever you'd like in that butter. You put it on your finished product, it just melts on and bastes everything with that flavor. You can do you can use crab or lobster in that. You could use bone marrow, which is kind of old school. But that's that. We're going to float it on top of the soup. It'll kind of melt, and in addition to the bacon that's in the soup, you'll have more bacon and apples. I'm going to crank this up and get it going a little better. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, good. So, now I'm not going to lie to you, I'm rushing this a bit. I want to get a little softer before we keep going, because those vegetables are still pretty opaque. When they get translucent and start getting soft, then you can move on. Everybody's so chatty. My goodness, what's going on over there? What am I missing out on? I'm going to put a little bit of liquid in there just to kind of help this along. Just a little bit. Yeah. Oh, dang it, that's chicken broth. You're right. I was supposed to make this vegetarian, and that's chicken broth. So there goes that. I'm glad you asked. Do we have any vegetarians? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, well, everything else will be vegetarian. I apologize for that. Extra pie for the vegetarians. Well, last time I tried to feed y'all octopus. I was in Yeah. Oh, darn.
We definitely speak vegan and vegetarian at the Willie Street.
That is part of our MO.
You may now know that we do a fine vegan wedding cake.
Which soup does not have bacon?
I'm making it, but it's going to have chicken stock in it because I screwed up. Okay. So we're going to... I did the other day at work and someone said that was really metal. You open that beer with a knife. All right. That's good enough. We're going to put in some more butter. And when you're making roux, you're looking for equal parts of fat and flour by mass. So a pound of flour, a pound of butter. But if you ever need that much, you're going to need a bigger pot. We're going to cook this down a little. Got to melt that. This is induction burn. Anybody familiar with induction cooking? It's science. So.
Question while you're stirring.
What's that?
Question while you're stirring.
While I'm stirring, yeah, absolutely.
Put the veggies in to soften them up before you did the roux.
Yep.
Does it make a difference if you were to start the roux first and then add the veggies and let the heat from
The roux?
that?
I don't think it wouldn't cook necessarily. Yeah, you kind of You can either make the roux separately or you can make it on top of the veg, but the other way around just doesn't work because that once the roux is cooked, you kind of have to proceed, otherwise the roux continues to cook. And if the flour gets dark, it starts taking on flavor. We're just going to make a blonde roux, which is real light and doesn't impart any flavor. But like when you're making gumbo, a real dark roux, you're going to have all that flavor in there. And there's, you know, the range of roux. So the darker it goes, the more you get that nutty flavor. So I'm putting the flour in. That's about 1/3 of a cup. And the trick to roux is you gotta smell for that raw flour smell to go away. And it starts taking on a nuttiness. And it's a little raw yet. And it'll stick to the bottom of the pot a little, but as you go, it'll release. We need a mirror, you know? So that's what we're going for. It's kind of lumpy looking, but the roux is cooked, the flour's cooked. And if it's not cooked, you'll know because your finished soup will taste like raw flour and have little dumplings in it. And if you're not making dumpling soup, you don't want that. What's that? This is on high, but this thing's slow. You have to regulate it as you go. Because if it starts getting too hot and the roux starts to burn, you'll know you got to back off a little. And when that happens, when you start to get a little too hot, you can always add a little liquid. But we're ready for beer, so I'm going to put the beer in. A little bit at a time, because if you get it cold real fast, you'll get more dumplings. So a little bit of liquid, let it get hot. It's not unlike when you temper eggs. When you're adding eggs to hot liquid, you add the hot liquid to the eggs a little bit at a time. It's a similar method. Cooking with beer can be tricky too, because if you overcook it, or if you use the wrong kind, you can get real bitter notes, which can be good in the right place. But for this, we don't want it to be too powerful. Well, for this is Czech lager. A Pilsner would be fine for this application. When you're doing like a braise, something heavy, something meaty like lamb, a porter or a stout will do fine. And it's going to be in there a long time and it's going to really simmer. But if you're going to cook things down hot and fast, you want to use a lighter beer. So you don't really bring out the bitterness. So I got the beer cooked down pretty good there. That's probably about 3/4 or a quarter of the way. What's the word I'm looking for? Evaporated, reduced, thank you. And go a little bit more. All right, I like to add the spices early so they have time to kind of let their oils out and blossom or bloom. So we're gonna get that in there. And that's paprika and thyme. Actually, that's smoked paprika in place of smoked cheddar cheese. I think this will help. This will be a little, the smoked cheddar cheese would be nice, but it kind of gets lost in there. The paprika brings it all out. So that's good. We're gonna get the stock in there. Same method, just a little bit at a time.
Mike, you want to talk about the responsibility of cream soups?
The responsibility?
It's something you have to hang out with.
Yeah, cream soups you can't walk away from so much. I mean, once the roux is cooked and it's all in there, if you keep it low, you can simmer it, but the bottom will scorch if you're not paying attention. And that's really the downfall of a good soup, is the bottom. Oh yeah, what's up? Oh, this is yellow onion, but you can use white, you could really use red, but cooking reds is kind of a shame because the color just goes away and they turn gray. So, but if that's all you got, there's no shame in that. These onions, I think, might be from, I think they are from New Traditions Family Farm out southwest of town. Robert Schultz, an interesting fellow and a great farmer. Provides us with a lot of collard greens and potatoes and onions and pork sometimes. I bought a half a pig from him once. All right, we're gonna let that simmer a minute. How's the soup going? Who's got soup? Is it good? All right. We're off to a good start. I'd hate if that was a bad thing, that'd be bad.
Okay.
All that butter? Everybody's getting enough butter, right? Yeah. We got enough soup?
So who has it?
Hey, oh, okay, we got the back row.
Oh,
Is the soupless row.
yeah.
How is it, Ellen? My ultimate critic. Because my mom's not here. All right, so I'm going to put the cream in. And at this point, the roux come together, the soup's thickened. Adding the cream's not going to cause any problems, just adding it in there. That was heavy cream, yeah. But you could use half and half if you had it. Yes?
Use half and half when you get that sort of curdling.
It will if you get too hot. You got to keep the temp down. Yeah. And that'll happen with any cream soup. If you get it too hot, it'll break. Because when you make the roux, the fat encapsulates the flour, and that allows it to form the chains that thicken the soup. But if it gets real hot, those bonds break, and then you just get oily soup and chunks of butter salads or milk salads. Science. Yes?
Does it matter half and half or heavy cream?
Heavy cream will make it a little denser.
Heavy cream will break down the way half and half will?
It, not as quickly, not as easily. Yeah, it'll hold up longer, and it'll be richer, you know. All right, once this gets a little warmer, we're gonna put the cheese in. Then we'll move on to salad. Cheese. I mean, we might as well finish this. I know you've all eaten already. So with the cheese too, you want to turn the heat down to a simmer, because the cheese can also break. Too much cheese too fast, and the fat comes out of the cheese, and it's all done. So we're going to put in a little bit, and we're going to work it in. And a little bit more. Another thing, you don't want to use too sharp of a cheese just on its own. If you use just sharp cheddar, it's liable to break because of the fat content is so low, and all you've got is the milk solids. That's why mozzarella is so good for melting. It's very fatty and rich.
So don't use sharp cheddar.
You can. Don't use just sharp cheddar. Use maybe a third or half. Yeah. And really, sharp cheddar, like a really good, like a 10-year-old, like hook sharp cheddar, it's almost kind of wasted on this. You might be better off like melting that on a slice of pie or just eating it on its own. Yeah. But, you know, that's, I worked at a restaurant once, a long time ago, where a bunch of the, actually I had left there by this point, and a bunch of people's checks were bouncing, and the owners were off in Napa on a wine tour. And we were all kind of bitter about that. And so somebody, maybe I did work there, somebody decided to take like the 8-year cheddar and make macaroni and cheese for the staff. And truffle oil. It was really good, but it was probably a $30 bowl of mac and cheese. But that's what you get for running off on your employees. And there it is. It's all in there. It's in good shape. Are we all out over there? Oh, there's still more. Look at that. And that's it. I mean, you could serve that now. It'll be better tomorrow. You could put in some chives, you could put in some more bacon, whatever you'd like, but that's beer cheese soup. So, and that works, I mean, that could be sauteed mushrooms and cream and be cream and mushroom. That could be broccoli. That could be whatever you want it to be. Yes? It is. In fact, we just started bagging and freezing our soups at the co-op for shipping to the stores. Not freezing, we're bagging them, and if they need to, they will, but that's beside the point. So that'll be on the menu starting October 25th? I don't know where that came from, but I got it. So that'll be at the store, and I imagine it'll be popular.
What department will it be?
The deli. If you look at the salad bar, there'll be some soup wells at the end of the salad bar. So let's move on to salad. Oh, yeah, absolutely. As many questions as soup. I love talking about soup.
If you wanted to, if I wanted to substitute kielbasa.
Oh, yes.
Like with the,
You know, that's a good point. Whenever you're cooking something, if it calls for bacon, and you're out of bacon, but you got some ham or some sausages or whatever you got left over, use it. If I'm out of bacon, I'll use sliced lunch meat if I have to. There's no reason you have to stick with a recipe. Recipes are guides. And, you know, if you've never made something before, sure, do the recipe. But once you do that, you can go off on your own. Oh, yeah. Stock is, gosh, I mean, it's more about stock is when you follow all the stock rules, which are, you know, you roast the bones, cold water, your mirepoix is a certain ratio of vegetables. But just boiling leftover chicken parts, that's broth. And that's actually what this was. We cooked some chicken for our enchilada filling, and there's always leftover juice, and I said, let me take that. But stock is, you know, if you talk to like French culinarians, they're very, very particular about things like stock and all that stuff. I mean, it's tradition. It's been honed over the years, but broth is just, you know, whatever you've got, you boil it up, it's broth. But stock, I think, to me at least, I mean, there's probably some debate on these things, and I'm sure I could get into that with another cook, but as far as I'm concerned, stock is bones and vegetables and no seasoning. Broth can be, you know, your chicken bones that maybe came off the rotisserie chicken you bought at the co-op, and you got the leftover bones, you boil them up. All right, well, this attractively packaged vegetable is spinach, if you didn't know, baby spinach. This is the industrial 4-pound box that we get at the co-op because, you know, we use a lot of spinach because it's a co-op. But I love spinach. I just cooked some the other day for another event. I creamed it, creamed spinach. Just sauteed it and put in some heavy cream and cooked it down and down and down. But this is, you know, this is nice this time of year too. This is baby spinach, but if you get the winter spinach, it's a little tougher, but it's a little more flavorful because it's kind of been through something. You know, it's like late season broccoli is a little sweeter, or it's Brussels sprouts when there's been a frost, they're better because they kind of had to fight. So they're a little sweeter, they got more sugars in them. So this is going to be nice it'll hold up to this dressing that I've got here. And I'm using radicchio because radicchio is kind of bitter. And I got roasted vegetables that have been kind of sweet. We'll get to those in a minute. But the radicchio is going to be offset by the sweetness of the vegetables that we roasted. What's that? Oh, radicchio is a kind of cabbage. And it's the kind, you'll see this in like spring mix when you buy it. You recognize that? And it's good for if you cut them in quarters and grill them. You can oil them and just grill them in the summer. They're nice with fish or something. But this is just shredded up. It's going to go in the salad. It's kind of bitter, like I said. There'll probably be enough you can have a taste if you want to try it on its own. But that bitterness is going to get cut by, I made this brown butter vinaigrette. So I browned the butter. Everyone familiar with brown butter? Yeah, so beurre noisette is the French term, which means hazelnut butter. Because as you cook it, it takes on that aroma of hazelnuts. If you cook it too long, you get beurre noir, which is black, and it's got its uses, but not today. So I made that beurre noisette, and I made the vinaigrette with that, some cider. Actually, you got that recipe too, don't you? All right, love it. So now you know how I made it. Roasted vegetables. This time of year, you got your root vegetables, and you know through the winter months, it's a lot of root vegetables. There's a lot you can do with them besides just mashing them or making a salad out of them. Here I've got parsnips, which I roasted with cinnamon, and turnips that I roasted with some chipotle pepper, and the squash is roasted with cumin. Yeah, and those are kind of like woodsy, wintry flavors to me. They're kind of autumnal flavors. I mean, some of those things are made from tree bark, cinnamon, obviously. Any questions so far? Yeah. Oh, a second. Go right ahead.
How long and how hot?
I was going to get to that, yeah. Roasting vegetables is kind of an art. So you want to start them hot. So there's a couple tricks. First of all, you want to cut them too small. If they're too small, things like carrots that aren't as dense as like the squash, they'll cook too fast and they'll brown on the outside, but the inside will be mush. With these parsnips are kind of woody. So I got the oven to like 400 degrees, and I put them in there with the oil on them and just cooked them real hot and hard. And they were done pretty quickly. But at home, we have convection ovens, so it's a little different in that way. But at home, you're going to want to start hot, and when you start seeing the browning, if you're not cooked in the middle, turn it down and let them cook a little more slowly till they're done throughout. But you want the brown on the edges like that, because that's where all the flavor is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do. Yep, exactly. Oil, salt, pepper, and seasoning. And the seasoning goes on beforehand, and usually use more than you think you need, because it's going to get on there, and you're like, oh, that's a lot. But when it starts getting hot, and it just doesn't, the more you have, the better. Not the more you have, the better, but you want to dial it in. It's not going to be the first time you do it, but you can always add more at the end. But I always use a little more than I think I need. I'll put in a tablespoon and say, okay, a little more. And that's kind of what happened here. Because you don't want to lose that entirely. So I'm going to put a couple handfuls in each of these. This was safflower, because I wanted a very neutral flavor. Oh, it's the same thing. It's just a bunch of you. So 2 salads. Brown butter. You get the you put the butter in the pan, turn it on, and walk away for a little bit, but not too long because you don't want to burn it. But keep an eye on it. So what happens is, I just explained this at work the other day. Butter's made of fat, milk solids, and water. So while you're melting it, the water's going to come out in steam, and the milk solids will come. They'll float to the top. If you just melt butter and you see that white stuff on the top, that's the milk solids. What you're trying to do is to get the fat portion hot to cook the milk solids and brown them, just like the brown on the vegetables. You're going to caramelize the sugars and the lactose in the milk solids, and that makes the butter brown. And like I said, if you keep going, it makes it black. But that, like I said, it has its uses. So we're going to take the lid off because this is kind of chunky. Where's my garbage? There's my garbage. All right. Oh, and as you can see, butter solidifies, which is why I had to melt this early when you all were here. This is starting to soften up nicely at room temperature. But you're going to need to, if you make this at home, you're going to need to soften it because the butter solidifies just like butter does. Anybody else? Anything? Yeah.
How long would it be for that?
Hmm? Oh, in the refrigerator? Gosh, I think indefinitely. I mean, we only let them go 7 days at work, but at home, I've got some vinaigrette that's been in there for a while. And I mean, there's fat on the top, so the fat isolates all the other things from the air, and it seals it in there. So as long as the fat stays, not rancid, you're good. But I mean, you go a couple weeks and you're fine. Don't do that thing. My grandma used to do this thing, and my mother's probably going to watch this and give me a hard time because I talked about my grandma last time. But she would have the cruet in the fridge and just keep adding, and that was always good. That's fine. But at some point, you're going to stop adding because you're going to start getting something bad. Is there a little vinaigrette on there? And I know it looks like a lot, but there's a lot of you. And then the glamorous culinary industry salt and pepper shakers right there. Just a little bit of salt. No, that's a little pepper. And we'll do a little salt. And this is another one of those things you can do whatever you want. You've got iceberg lettuce and potatoes. Roast your potatoes and put them on your... All right, there goes that. Oh, thank you, Tony. Let me get the bad boy out here. Nice. Okay. Oh. That took about 20 minutes. But that was in convection oven, so at home, 30. Parsnips, butternut squash, and turnips. So the last thing that's going in this salad, this is kind of a whim. I wanted to use ground cherries. The season just ended. And I wanted something sweet to kind of go with the sweetness of the vegetables and to kind of further cut the bitterness of the radicchio. So this is brittle that I made from pumpkin seeds. I dry toasted them, and then I spread them on a sheet pan and poured hot caramel on top. And then I hit them with some chipotle and some cinnamon. Can you tell I'm into the chipotle and cinnamon these days? And I'm just going to kind of chunk it up and throw it in there. Yeah, powder. Yeah, the fresh ones, I like the fresh ones, but for this application, And the pumpkin seeds, we have those in bulk at the co-op in the bulk section. And I love them. I mean, they're great for just snacking. But you throw them in the oven and toast them, they kind of puff up and start crackling and popping. They're great. Yep, they're in the bulk section at the co-op. Yeah, and they're beautiful green.
What is it?
Pumpkin seed brittle. And the pumpkin seeds, when you toast them, they kind of let out this beautiful emerald green oil. In fact, there's a product from Austria, an oil, pumpkin seed oil, that's just this astonishingly green color. It's really expensive, but if you're ever looking for something fun to keep around the house, it's good stuff. So this is, I know this is kind of, it's the hands, but I got the gloves on, don't worry. And it's just easier this way. I got a taste, pardon me. Okay, we're good to go. Yeah, sure. I think that's good. We can always make more. Make sure the vegetarians get extra. Any questions about that kind of stuff? Yeah. Starting with you, and then we'll go to you. Sorry. Yeah, capers are a little berry from a caper bush. They're a little tiny, a little fruit. They're pickled, they're brined. So they impart a salty, sour flavor. But there's a little more of an herbal, not herbal, floral note to them too. Yeah. And then you were next.
Parsnips, what did you put on? Cinnamon?
Parsnips were cinnamon. That was all kind of on a whim.
And squash,
Cumin.
cumin, and then chipotle?
Chipotle on the turnips. But yeah, that could have been
Yeah,
anything.
you just kind of can mix it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't have chipotle, you can use cayenne. If you don't have cayenne, you can use chili powder. It's kind of limitless. I saw somebody else over here first, and then you're next. Who was over here? Okay, you're next. What was your question? I did. Well, not individually. Yeah, no, I did. I did. I separated them because they cook at different rates. I tried cooking carrots and parsnips together because, gosh, they look alike, but they don't cook the same. And you can do them all together if you want, but I want them all to be just right. Should I make some more yet? Sure. Another thing that would be nice on this salad would be some goat cheese or some shaved Parmesan. Any other salad questions or general? I do love your questions. What's up? What's that? Yeah, it was. I took sugar and just boiled it till it turned to that amber color, amber caramel color, and just kind of poured it over the top. That was the second time. I tried it the first time by mixing them into that, and it just it didn't work. So this was Mark II. All right, let's talk about kapusta.
Kapusta. Anyone familiar with the word?
Yeah, kapusta. Any other Polish people in here? So this is my aunt's kitchen smelled like kapusta pretty much for all the time I knew her. It's sauerkraut mixed with cabbage, onions, bacon, and mushrooms. Caraway, apples, vinegar, brown sugar. It's a pretty traditional side dish. I had this stuff braising all afternoon with sausages in it. I'm going to start with the bacon. I'm going to start cooking. Let's cook it first. So it starts with cooking some bacon up. But we're not going to...
Mike, are you doing a veggie version?
Gosh, I really should. Yeah, I'm going to have to. Normally I'd start with bacon, but we're going to do a veggie version here. So there's that.
You would recommend starting?
I would start with butter or oil. It doesn't matter too much what you use. In this case, actually, I'm going to use a little bit of my brown butter vinaigrette because I forgot to bring oil. So we're going to use this oil. And it's vegetarian, so it's a little cheat. It's a little sneaky. But like I said before, if you don't have bacon, use sausage. If you don't have oil, use your vinaigrette. Here's my gloves. So rule number one with cooking mushrooms is treat them like meat. Get the pan hot and sear them because they're mostly water. And if you put them in there when the pan's cold, they're just going to sit there and give up their water and get all kind of mushy like the ones in the can. Don't use the ones in the can. So, well, we don't do that at the co-op, do we? What's that? Aunt Hattie used the Pennsylvania Dutch in the can. And that's okay. Yep, these were washed. I don't wash them. I brush them off with a brush. These were washed in a sink. Apparently not very well because there's some dirt. But I give them a quick rinse, get them brushed off, but don't let them sit in the water too long because they start picking up a lot of water. And they're already a lot of water. So this pan is obviously really hot. So we're going to sear those to get all those juices locked in. And this is a good thing. If you've got sauerkraut in the cupboard and cabbage in the drawer, and if you're serious about cabbage, you're going to want one of these. This is probably a 1920s or 30s model T&D special sanitary cabbage chopper. There's a shuttle that sits in these little grooves on the back, and you grate the cabbage. I saw one that was twice this size when I was visiting Michigan a couple years ago that I regretted not buying. It was the Indianapolis sauerkraut machine. But this one hangs on my wall now. The woman who, or the person probably, I assume it was a woman, it's the 30s, sorry. But whoever used this would probably be shocked to hear that it's hanging on my wall. Because I love things that were used, tools. Someone just had this in their kitchen, and once a year they'd bust it out and make a couple 100 pounds of sauerkraut, you know. And this hangs, I just love these kinds of things, and it's just a novelty to me, but I wanted to share that with y'all. So speaking of cabbage, you saute those mushrooms. You get some cabbage in there. Stir that around. Well, that's the onions, rather, sorry. And it's getting a little, it's getting a little dry, so we'll put a little bit of that beer in there. Nothing wrong with that. It really is. So, yeah, this was like a thing. You go to my aunt's house on Sunday, and the house smelled like this no matter what, even when she wasn't cooking it, but when she was cooking it, like the neighbors knew. My old man, when my folks got divorced, my dad's like, can I still get some of Auntie's kapusta? Yes. He did. I'm not kidding. That stuff's good. And I wouldn't touch it till I was in my teens. Because, you know, what kid wants sauerkraut? Kapusta. Haluska, that's something else. What is that? Is it? Ah, yes, the noodles. Okay, that's where I was missing. Sorry? Kapusta. And I'm going to get the recipe to Tony. I was just kind of short notice, so I didn't get to it yet. But, and actually, there she is. And actually, I was stunned to see the other day that kapusta has a Wikipedia entry. So, there you go. So we'll let that braise for a bit. That's raw cabbage. We're going to put sauerkraut in it. Yeah, but I want this braise for a minute first. Let's let it saute a little bit. Break down a little. Now, the stuff I brought for you today, that I made today at the co-op, has got finely shredded cabbage, and it's got hand-cut strips of cabbage, because it braised all afternoon, and I like for the different types of cabbage to, like the finer stuff kind of melts away a little bit, but the hand-shredded stuff keeps a little bit of tooth, so it's a little more substantial. Let's see, we're going to set up over here. We got a couple sausages. So I took some sausages and I grilled them, and I nested them into the pans of kapusta. Let's see. Here's some potatoes I roasted. These are fingerling potatoes. They're usually a little smaller. I was hoping for the little guys, and I'd roast them whole. But these are a little bigger. I sliced them into rounds, steamed them for a couple seconds, and then roasted them off with butter, dill, paprika, salt and pepper, and a little bit of thyme. But the sausages, I'm excited about this. We got the Willie Street Banger sausage, which is a pork sausage. And I've got the Willie Street white wine boar sausage. And I think, see if I can tell them apart, as in wild, yeah. But they weren't wild, I don't think. Yeah, that's the boar sausage, okay. So I'm going to start slicing sausages, and we're going to need to, not quite yet, we'll start plating in a minute. I'm going to get the, I think last time I didn't cook, it was a little easier, I'm not going to lie. I brought it all already done. Like, oh, there's people watching me. So that was a little vinegar and a little bit of sauerkraut. And at home, if you use a can of Frank's kraut to 1 head of cabbage, you're on the right track. But you really can't do wrong with this. If it tastes too tart, add some brown sugar. If it's too sugary, add some vinegar. That was brown sugar and caraway seed. And if you really want to, you can buy the Polish style kraut that already has the caraway in it. The co-op sells Frank's. What's that? Oh, there's caraway in it and some sugar. Yeah, mostly the caraway. So I wish I had a lid, but I'm going to put this on there instead.
The co-op doesn't carry Polish.
What's that?
Co-op doesn't carry Polish cabbage.
We have Frank's sauerkraut.
Oh, and
That's Polish enough for me. I think it's from Ohio. That's what Auntie used. That's what Aunt had to use, and she came over on the boat. She knows. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the question was about the dark brown spots, the darker parts. Yeah, that's where the surface was was braised and the liquid went away and left behind all that flavor. And when this went in the oven, it was kind of this color. It was like that. And so after sitting in the oven for a good long time, it got nice and brown. Yes? Yeah. It was, the parsnips had cinnamon. The turnips, oh wait, so you're not writing that one. Oh, parsnips were cinnamon, turnips were chipotle powder, and the squash was cumin. Yeah. Oh, I got some more of these. I went to MATC's culinary program back in 1998 and 9, and I actually didn't complete the program. At the time I was working at the Great Dane, and then I got a job. I just made a phone call and got a working interview at L'Etoile, and I did a couple working nights there, and then they hired me there, and I wouldn't say I stopped going to school, but I had like 2 more classes to take, and I didn't take them because I was so busy working. And then after that, that's where I met a chef that I consider to be my mentor. And he went on to open a restaurant that I worked at for him for a couple years too. Yeah. What was that? Oh, I had a question, sorry.
What's the restaurant?
That was Harvest. So I started at L'Etoile, and then he and I worked together at the Opera House while he was getting ready to open Harvest. And then we all went over there. It'll be 3 years in March. So almost a little more than 2.5, I guess. Yeah. And actually, to be honest, I took about 9 years off, 10 years off from the cooking business to work in the wine business. I got a lot of chefs kind of burn out, you know. You lose your weekends, you lose your family life a little bit. And that's the nice thing about the co-op. It's weird to me that we have a hard time sometimes finding chefs because who wants to work every weekend? You know, and paid vacation and benefits and all the things you don't get in the restaurant industry. The co-op gives, so I'm glad to work there. And I still get to do fun stuff like this. Thank you. So what should we talk about? Anything else?
You sell wild boar.
I don't know if it's wild. I don't think you can sell wild anything apart from fish. But it's farm-raised boar. It's the same thing. And you know, you take a pig and let it loose. I believe within 2 generations it goes back to its feral state.
There's a lot of laws in Wisconsin making about what kind of pigs you can raise and not.
Yeah.
So that's a really tough one.
And if you want to hunt boar, it's just you can hunt boar, and they're glad to have them hunted because they're terrible for the environment. And they are very popular in the South. You know, for me, it's just getting all the moving parts to line up. Like next week, this $5 dinner. Okay, so we make pasta fagioli every week. We make 150, 200 pounds of it every week. Next week, we're going to need to make that 150 pounds plus another 330 pounds. So, you know, we get all that stuff. We make it all the time, right? But we needed to order an extra 30 pounds of Italian sausage. We had to order an extra 150 baguettes. We had to order another 20 pounds of butter. And that butter comes from a different place than the baguettes, and they come from a different place than the sausage. And it's all these moving parts and all these people, and we have to rely on each other. You have to know that Dave's going to order the sausage, and he's going to talk to Don, and Don's going to get it and we're going to have it in on time. And the West Side Store is going to make the sausage. All these things. It's a lot of moving parts. It's like trying to hit a moving target sometimes. Not to mention, you know, today we did production and we did catering, and you had a big meeting, and we did this. So and tomorrow's going to be making Thanksgiving dinner and photographing it, and production, and I think there's more catering. More catering, more meetings. We love meetings at the co-op. We do. Oh, we love to talk about. You know, one of the things I grew up on that I still enjoy is something called Depression Supper that my mom used to make, and her mom used to make, and it was they ate during the Depression when you had 12 people to feed and you got a pound of burger, and you fry it up with onions and mushrooms and like 2 pounds of pasta. To stretch all that out, that's Depression Supper. I love Depression Supper. I love my mom's baked spaghetti. I make that sometimes. But then, you know, recently I took a picture of all the different ramen I bought. I love the Asian market. There's one on Sherman called, I think it's called Hmong, but it's spelled H-M-O-O-B. Is that pronounced? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but someone told me that was right. So that place is great. And then the one on Monona Drive, Viet Hoa, thank you. I love that place. I went in there and bought just a bunch of different ramens. And I took a picture of the family. It was about a dozen of them. And that's just fun to make. I'll go, I got scraps left over in the fridge. I got some bok choy. I got some mushrooms. Throw it in there. So that's an easy one. And I like salad a lot too. But yeah, believe it or not, I like salad.
Maybe I'm just missing something where a real chef would say, no, you ruined
No, I think that's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I eat ramen noodles. They're dried noodles. I mean, convenience is great. I mean, I've got a sous vide cooker that is great for things like that. Real, older, like tougher cuts of meat, pork, beef ribs. You put them in there for 12, 15, 20 hours, and you finish them. That's 15 hours. You can do that in 10 minutes. That's fine. And I think the only difference, though, is when you braise something in an oven for like a long time, real low. I mean, you're naturally going to have evaporation of the liquids. You're going to have the conversion of the sugars, and it'll happen real slow over time. It's like aging wine, kind of. I mean, things change about it. It's a living thing, and it's moving and changing as you're cooking it. And the little pressure cooker, I mean, I've used pressure cookers to do all kinds of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, microwaves are fine, too. Don't turn off the camera. There's nothing wrong with that, and they come in handy. Shortcut. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And these people who served it all and set it all up, thank you. You're all hired at the OSK. Be there tomorrow at 6.